This is Allison Martin, and I am the National Market Director for Mentoring Women's Network. And I am thrilled to be here with today with Dr. Villarreal. Dr. Villarreal is a wonderful, wonderful woman that I've gotten to know over the course of the past several weeks, and I was thrilled when she agreed to be a part of the discussion today. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your background and your career and some of the thoughts that you might have, that would be great.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Allison. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I'm very excited about this program. I was born in the Republic of Panama, and I came to the United States in 1981, and then to do my finish my bachelor's degree, do my PhD, and then stayed here in the States. And after my postdoctoral work, I went to work at Eli Lilly and Company. I spent 21 years at Eli Lilly and Company, first in the Lilly Research Laboratories for 12 years, and then moved to the management area because I discovered that I love people development and mentoring and things like that. So I spent the last 10 years in the management area and retired last year in February of 2012.
So tell me a little bit, because I know we've had this discussion before, and one of the things that I enjoy every time we interact is that we have a shared passion for advancing women. And so if you could share with us a little bit about some of the changes that you saw in the time that you spent at Lilly, and perhaps where you see continued opportunity.
Actually, Lilly was like it was a very interesting experience for me because when I got there, I was the first Hispanic PhD at Lilly, and that was in 1990. And it was a very interesting experience because there were not other women or other Hispanic women in the research area that I could talk to or exchange ideas with. And I thought that was very interesting, and I thought it is important that that changes. The other piece that was very interesting, we had very few women chemists at the time, and that was due to the fact that the committee that was selecting or trying to find women chemists would always come back and say, oh, we cannot locate them, we cannot find them. And it's funny because they would go to the best universities in the nation and they could not come up with women. We talked to the head of the research area and told him that he had to change the composition of the committee in order to get different women and other women to come in. And it was very interesting because once the composition of the committee, the search committee changed, all of a sudden within 3 years, we had more than 50 female chemists at Lilly. So that was a very, very important change, and that was very exciting for me because that was during my time and I saw that, and I participated in those discussions, so that was very interesting. And it was interesting also that at that time when women got together and had like lunches just to talk and see what was going on, the men were terrified, and we would get all sorts of comments, and what are you talking about, and what are you discussing? And it was nothing serious. We were just, getting to know each other and trying to find some bonding and some camaraderie because there were not that many women in the research area. So it was important for the few that were there to, get together at least every 2 weeks or whatever and have conversations about how they were dealing with their careers, how they could help each other. And that was the most important point, how we could help each other, because we were not getting a lot of help from other porters, so it was important how we were going to support each other and help each other.
I think that's incredible in terms of a testimony for having some support within an organization and women helping each other. It's certainly something that we advocate for. Tell me what it was like to be the only woman chemist back when you first started.
No, actually, sorry, Allison, I misspoke. I am not a chemist. I am a molecular virologist by training. But it was interesting because being the only female Hispanic PhD, it felt very alone, and it felt like, you're the only one in this sea of other people. But then you start getting used to it, and people were pleasant and very nice. It wasn't like you were treated differently because you were the only Hispanic woman. What was interesting, though, was that at that time, had I not attended Harvard Medical School for my postdoctoral work, highly unlikely that I would have come into Lilly as a Hispanic female, because that was not the time when they were hiring Hispanics, many Hispanics and much less Hispanic females. So that is also another interesting aspect that has changed somewhat. So I'm very happy to see that. Yeah.
Well, and you've had it sounds like a tremendous career, and I know that you inspired a lot of people, a lot of men and women, I think, in the time that you were there. And I'm also aware of your commitment to community, and that's certainly admirable. Tell me about some of the people who had an influence on your life and career.
Actually, one of the people that had a big influence in my life was my mother. And it was interesting because my mother was always, her philosophy about things were respect to people or for people. You must always go with a win-win attitude with whatever you do, and everything is about relationships. And it's amazing, but those are the three things that I really incorporated into my being from her, because she lived it. It wasn't just she would say that, she really personified that and was a very good role model of those three aspects. So I really, integrated that into my personality, into my being, and it has served me beyond my wildest expectations.
And so in your approach to business and in life, you're trying to create win-win
Yes.
types of situations. And
Always. See, what happens is that when you go into a situation and you don't go with a win-win attitude and somebody loses, you may have won at that moment, but you have made an enemy. And that's not a good thing, see? And again, why would somebody like to lose face? You should always allow people to save face. Even if you're right, even if you are in command of the situation, always allow people to save face.
What advice would you give to someone going into a leadership position for the first time?
If you're going into a leadership position for the first time, and especially if you're going to supervise people, my advice would be you must know your people, and your people must know you. And when I say that, I'm not talking about knowing their names or what school they went to. No. You must know them as people, and they must know you. Because when things are going well, it's fine. There's not an issue. But when things are not going well and you need to get more from them, they need to know you, and you need to know what makes them tick. Because if you don't know what makes them tick, how can you get the most out of the people? So it's very important to know your people. The other thing that I think is very important is you have to care about your people and truly care. People know when you don't, and when you're making it up, people know that. And I think what I found throughout my career, the importance of caring about people is that when you have to give them, for example, some negative feedback or some, constructive feedback, whatever, if they know that you care, they may not like it, but they'll hear it. As opposed to if they know that you're just saying it to be aggravating them or whatever, they're not going to listen. And then again, change doesn't happen.
I think balancing too with the reminding people what they really excel at.
Exactly.
As long as giving them feedback for
Exactly.
growth. And I know that you do that as well. Tell me about mentoring and how that played into your career, and maybe some examples of mentors that you've had and how you were able to cultivate those, and also mentoring relationships that you've been a part of.
Actually, part of what happened to a lot of women, and I saw that a lot at Lilly, a lot of women think that networking and mentoring and those things are the same as schmoozing. And those are totally different. We're not talking about the same thing. It is very important to have a network where you are, because for women and for minorities, that's not even advancement, that is survival. You must have a network, that is critical. You have to have people that mentor you, because if not, and people that you mentor, because if not, you're going to be floundering in the organization, not knowing what's happening, you're not moving along, and you don't know why, but you need to have these mentors to help you. It's important also, the mentors, because if something happens to you behind the scenes and you don't know it's happening, that mentor can go and clean it for you. Before you even know that you're in a bad situation, that mentor has already cleaned that for you and, given you the benefit of the doubt with others, etc. So that is very important. I was very fortunate always to have very, very good mentors throughout my career, and mostly females, and I sought them out on purpose. I looked for females that thought as females and that behaved like females in a cooperative, respectful manner. So that was very important to me. But they were always good because I could go and run things by them and, get another perspective. If I was going to make a decision, I wanted to run it by someone that I respected. And if their decision was or their advice was different from what I was thinking, I would really take it seriously. In the end, you have to do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. But it is important also to listen to what the mentor has to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell me about some of the mentoring relationships that you've had, that people have called on you for advice and thoughts about careers, and maybe what you're passionate about when you talk to them.
when people talk to me, I always try to give them the advice, but I always tell them, this is what I would do. Doesn't mean that's what you have to do. And if I give them advice and they do something different, I'm fine with that. You know how some people get very upset if you give the advice and then the person doesn't take it. No, it's not about that. It's about helping the person try to sort things out, because everybody has to live with the consequences of the decision that they make. So I may have done something one way, but the person has the right to do it the way that they want. I'm there to help them sort it out, help them find. And also the thing that I like to do a lot is also working with other women, especially with women, but I have done it with men too. Who are they? Who are they? I'm a firm believer that once you understand who you are and you're very clear on who you are invincible. Aside from death, you are invincible, because then nothing can touch you. You know who you are, and you're going to act accordingly. But so to me, when I start mentoring, I'll talk about careers and all those things. But beyond that is I want to find out who that person is and help that person find out who they are. Yeah, not what people think that they are, but what they think that they are. Yeah.
I think when your life, both outside of the home and in the home and outside of that in work, is aligned with what your values are, I think is what you're talking about in terms of what's important to you and
right.
and what you really need in order to thrive. You know, that's when I think you can experience true happiness and true fulfillment. And so I think getting to the core with people is so very critically important. Tell me a little bit about what you're most passionate about.
I'm really passionate about people development. That's an area, that's something that gives me joy, and especially when I'm mentoring someone and I see them succeed and I see them be spectacular, that's where I derive my joy.
Yeah, absolutely. How have you, over the years, how have you balanced your work and your home life?
That's an important thing, because I think women always feel very pressured with the balance between work and home. And I think that for me, what was very important was to prioritize. You have to be very clear on your priorities. And for me, home was always more important. I took my work very seriously and I gave it my best, but home was always more important. So to me, that was very clear. I never had the conflict in a big way, because I was very clear that home was more important. Again, for somebody else, it could be work, and that's fine too. It's not that it's wrong. But see, you need to decide what it is. You have to be clear on what it is. I think once you're clear, it's all good.
Absolutely. I think a lot of us have talked about the work and home life balance, and men and women. I think we all kind of juggle a lot of different priorities and a lot of different hats that we wear. And so, you know, for me, it was always sometimes work wins and sometimes home wins, and trying to figure out, you know, it's not really this idea of balance where there's this little balance, you know, the traditional model where everything's equal, but it's about recognizing that sometimes it's going to ebb and flow, and you know, but you know, at the end of the day, I agree with you. I think the home piece is what's most critical.
And I think also there's a fallacy that we have fallen into, and we have bought into it. I must admit, women and minorities feel that you have to work twice as hard to be recognized, and that is not true. That is not true. I mean, society may have done that, and fine, but we have to change that, because by doing that, then we're putting an extra burden on ourselves, which makes it even more difficult to achieve that balance. Yeah.
I met with a male CEO yesterday. It's interesting that you say that, and he shared his observations, and he was at the end of his career getting ready to retire, and you know, he shared very openly and candidly that, you know, he felt 20, 30 years ago that women really did have to work twice as hard. He said the ones that got promoted were far outpacing the men that had been promoted. And of course, you know, he, like everybody else, has seen a shift over the years, and we all, I think, generally agree that there's more work to be done. But it was interesting to hear his perspective on that. And I think that there are a lot of people who have taken that on and feel that pressure to have to outperform in order to get to where they want to go. So you make a just really incredible and timely point too.
See, the other point that for me has been important is understanding that that's what I did, not who I am.
Sure.
See, because once you separate the two, then when things happen, and things happen in every organization, there are reallocations, there are changes. At Lilly, for example, I went through at least 2 reallocations. It's going to happen, and it's not personal. Those are business decisions. But if you think that that's who you are, the position that you hold, then you'll take it personally, and it breaks you down. As opposed to, no, this is what I do, okay? It's a business decision. I will make the arrangement, and I'll be okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I know that, and perhaps even people who are listening on the call today have experienced some unexpected changes in their careers, whether it's being in transition or positions that were different than what they had set out for. So what advice do you have for somebody who is suddenly finds himself in transition and it was not part of their plans or career path?
Flexibility is the key, and that's one of the things nowadays, that you must be flexible. If you're going to have one important trait, it better be flexibility, because it's going to happen no matter what company you're in, what organization you're in. Change is going to happen, and you have to be prepared for it. And I think that's tied up to the network piece. If you have a good network in the organization where you are, or outside, it doesn't, or a combination of, when these things happen, then you can draw on that network to help you find the next job. I remember when I was at the Lilly Center for Women's Health, and this happened in 2002, they closed the center. And I was at a meeting, and they just announced it up the cuff with that, oh, the Lilly Center is going to close, and oh my God. And in addition, it was a time when 700 managers were reallocated. Imagine, so 700 people have to find jobs. And I remember people getting all stressed and stuff, and I was heading to Washington, D.C. that day. So on my way to the airport, I sent an email to my AA with a list of 30 people that I needed to meet by the time I got back from Washington, D.C., because those were the people that were going to have positions, hopefully, and one of those people would pan out. And in effect, it did. But yeah, but the network piece, the network piece is critical.
That is that's an amazing example in terms of being able to, because I often see that it's when something happens, then people are out building relationships and building that network and establishing credibility, and really, I've seen it time and time again with women in our organization who suddenly find themselves in that role and are very surprised how quickly things turn when you have people that are there to support you and are in positions to help get you where you need to go.
Right, and it was nice because some of the people couldn't help me directly because they didn't have a position, but they knew who had. So then they said, go and talk to such and such because, such and such is hiring. Or I'll call such and such and help you with the new position. It was incredible. That time really showed to me the value of networking. If I had any doubts about it, that was the time, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an amazing thing when you have just a lot of people who are there and know your work, know you're credible to them and are in positions to be able to help you, I think.
And along with that, Allison, also comes the fact that you have to also be willing to help. Even if you're busy, even if you have a lot going on, if people come to you for something, please find the time to help them. Because in there, it's a give and take. It's that reciprocity that is part of the network. Because a lot of people want to have the network, but they don't want to put the time for the other people. And that doesn't work either. People quickly, they figure that out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, and that was part of kind of the establishment of our organization is based on the values, which are empowerment, development, and relationships.
Right.
And so, as you said, oftentimes we get busy, and if you're inundated with people who are requesting your help, taking the time and figuring out how you can do that is certainly something that is remembered too.
Yes. Oh yes. And I can give you I can give you a great example, Allison. This happened, when I was in the labs. And we had at Lilly something called Bring Your Daughter to Work Day. And that morning, I'll never forget that, one of the lawyers calls me desperate because her daughter was interested in science, and she had forgotten to ask me ahead of time if I could show her my lab. And it so happened it was one of those days when it was crazy busy. It was just, and I thought for a moment, I don't have the time. I said, no, bring her over, bring her over. I spent an hour with her. It was fine. She left happy. Okay. I'm not kidding, Allison. 3 days later, I had invited a big guy seminar speakers to come to Lilly, and we were supposed to get confidentiality agreements 2 weeks in advance. That was the rule, and it was not, you couldn't do it any other way, 2 weeks in advance. 3 days before the fellow was supposed, I realized I didn't have a confidentiality agreement. I almost had a coronary, but I got on the phone and I called the lawyer that had brought the daughter. And of course I didn't say, you know, you brought your daughter and I was not. No, no, no. I said, I'll be in your debt. This is the situation. Please, just send it. Within 5 minutes, I had that confidentiality agreement in my hand. See, that was one of those times when I thought, wow. Right. But see, it pays off. Just, you know, an act of kindness. It's always rewarded. And even if you don't get it from the same person, somebody else will do it for you. Absolutely. But always find the time. Always find the time for others.
I love that story, too.
Yeah, it was
like you weren't giving with expectation.
Exactly,
and
exactly.
Yet, you know, here 3 days later, wow, that's pretty incredible. What are you motivated by?
I'm motivated by when I see, like I said earlier, when I see somebody succeed. That really motivates me. That makes me, actually gives me energy. That's where I draw my energy from. When I'm able to help somebody and see them succeed and just guide them in the direction that they need to go. And when I see them turn really spectacular, I don't know, that gives me joy. That gives me joy.
Absolutely. What have been your greatest career successes, either in the people development aspect or in your individual achievements? What are your
Actually, if you talk about the achievement part, when I was in the research labs, we worked with another company in Boston, and we developed a hepatitis C compound that very soon is going to be in the market under the new company, but the bulk of the work was done at Lilly in the group that I was responsible for. So that gives me, it makes my 21 years there well worth it. Yeah. In terms of, if I look at, but even that, that I hold very precious, the people development piece has been very good for me. And there are a couple people that I mentored and that were, I mean, magnificent. They were really bright and really good at what they did. And they have turned beyond my wildest expectations. And that has, I would say, has been my biggest joy there. Yeah. Also, some of the changes, for example, in terms of we did not have a policy for gays and lesbians at Lilly and stuff. We fought very hard to have that happen, and it happened. The daycare center at Lilly was a big to-do that we were talking about it, and the family committee that I shared pushed very hard, and eventually that happened too. So a number of things that happened at Lilly, some changes, the number of chemists coming in, female chemists, things like that made me feel very happy. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I really admire and just appreciate everything that you did to pave the way for other women, you know, both at Lilly and you know, in other facets. What questions, I know for those of you who are on the call, you have the opportunity to type in any questions that you may have. So I should have mentioned this earlier, but I will be taking questions throughout the call. So I would really certainly appreciate any questions that you might have. Looks like we're getting one here. So what are some of your future goals and endeavors that you hope to achieve?
Now that I'm retired, Allison, I have more time to spend on community service, and I'm very involved with the Women's Fund of Indianapolis, which I love, great organization. And also, in addition, now with the mentoring group, I'm very excited with the mentoring network. And what I want to continue doing is see women succeed. That's very important to me, and see the changes that need to happen. I think in the whole country right now, there are serious issues that are affecting women and affecting women's health. And I think that we need to continue working to change those things.
I couldn't agree more, and you and I have talked a lot about the shared passion that we have, because I don't think that many of us realize how much work there really is still to be done until we started to exchange stories and talk about mentoring and leadership development and seeing stories like we saw on the cover page of the IVJ a couple of weeks ago about the lack of women in those top leadership positions, and that there still continues to be a gender gap, and still earning 77 cents of every dollar, and there's just so much opportunity. And you know, and fundamentally, as you and I have talked about, I really do believe that it starts by how are we supporting and developing one another. And so it excites me to hear you share the story of women getting together at Lilly and just providing that support for one another, because that certainly doesn't always happen. What experiences do you think you've had that prepared you for the challenges that you experienced in your career?
I think that moving from Panama and coming to the States to study was a big thing because it's interesting. At that time, I was extremely shy, and that was a huge step for me, being away from the family and being on my own. But it was great because it also made me get out of that shyness, and I had to fend for myself. So I had to put that shyness to the side, and it was great because then I was able to move forward with that. So that was a good thing. And I think also part of, when I was in Panama, there was a military government, and my family had been in the opposition for a long time. And one of the experiences which was very traumatic for me. I was arrested in one of the demonstrations, and I spent like 2 weeks in jail.
Oh, wow.
And it was extremely scary because it involved torture and other things that were very hard for me. But it also built a lot of character, and what it taught me was what else can happen. That was probably the most scary thing that I ever experienced, and I came out of that alive and in one piece. So that built a lot of resilience in me. I had lived a very sheltered life up to that period, so it was very, very scary. But it taught me that, I am resilient. I can take a lot. I can take a lot.
Those are incredible examples, I think, and it's always interesting to meet people who, like you, have strength. I would call it strength of character, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's recognizing when you're able to overcome things like that, how strong you really are, and that there's not much that compares to that.
And you never know, until until you go through it, right?
No,
right.
No,
right.
There are many, and it's so funny that you mentioned that because I was reflecting on this recently because, like you, I was also quite shy growing up, and there was a point in my life where I had to push myself, and if I hadn't, I wasn't going to be able to survive,
exactly.
And those types of things. And so it's those instances in life where we are forced to really push ourselves and face not only our fears but also understand, kind of what our opportunities are, and if you don't break out of your comfort zone, you really don't get to know yourself in terms of what your capabilities are, and so it's kind of exciting to hear you say that as well, because it's something that I've reflected on, and then as time goes on too, you get to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and at some point being able to just let go of what you're not good at is a very freeing thing too.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's part of what we were talking earlier about knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what you're good at and what you're not, don't worry about what you're not good at. Like you said, drop it.
Right.
Drop it. Excel in what you're good at and derive joy from that. Because, see, there's also the piece of being good at something but not liking it.
Sure.
And I'll give you an example. Details is one of those things. I'm very good with details, with the best of them, but I hate details. So it's something that doesn't give me joy, whereas people, I am good with people and I love people. But see, that I like. See, so then I spend my time doing the things that I love. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's funny because it's that intersect that you're trying to find, that
right.
What you're good at and what gives you joy at the same time, and also ideally what will compensate you is where the career field that you should choose. So what would you highlight are your strengths? What are you really good at?
I think that what I'm really good at is getting the best out of people and seeing it, and then even if they're not seeing it, I can see that, and I can see their strength, I can see their power, and then helping them unleash that power and that strength.
That's so neat. What other questions do you have, those of you who are on the call today? Here's one. What are some of the character traits you think are important for women to succeed in the workplace?
I think nowadays, especially, what we talked about earlier, flexibility is of the essence. You must have flexibility because things are going to change. Businesses are changing. The world is changing. So you have to be flexible. I think integrity, you can never go wrong with integrity. I think, and integrity is one of those things that you should always have it. Because I hear some people say, well, I'm different at home than I am at work. You should be the same person at work that you are at home. Integrity is not something that is pliable or flexible that you can change it. No. It is, you have it or you don't have it, and you should always have integrity. I think that's an important point. I think your credibility is important too. When you're in an organization, you have to have credibility there. And it comes from your behavior, from how you treat people, from walking the talk, you know, by leading by example. Those are all traits that I think are very important. You should never ask one of your employees to do something that you are not going to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the leading by example piece is
huge.
So
it's huge.
It is huge. What advice do you have for people managing their careers? I mean, a lot of that's talked about a lot and discussed and thought of in terms of you know that. But what are some tactical things that people can do to really manage their career and get to where they really want to go?
I think one piece that is really critical is if you want something, you have to tell your supervisor what is it that you're interested in. Because if you don't wait for them to guess, because nobody's a mind reader. It's the same at home. Your spouse, you know, don't be expecting your spouse to read your mind when you. No. If you want something, you must say it, and you must say, "I'm interested in this position. It may not be available now, but know that I have an interest in this position." Such that when the position opens, you may not get it, but at least your supervisor cannot say that, "Oh, I didn't know that you had an interest in it," because that happens a lot too, and it happens a lot to women. "Oh, no, I didn't think that you would want this position." But then you cannot argue anything because you haven't expressed an interest in the position. So I think that's a key thing that I have seen in a lot of situations where the person doesn't speak up and then it comes back to haunt them. So definitely, and again, you don't have to be aggressive about things, but you should be assertive about one of the things that you want. The other piece is, and I hear this in many instances, women that are really bright and really, when they're going to ask a question, they will say, "Oh, this may be a stupid question, but why are you saying that? You know that it's not a stupid question. Why are you saying that?" You're predisposing the listener to think, "Oh, well, this may not be such a good idea. What is that?" See, so avoid that kind of self-deprecating. You don't have to be arrogant. There's a difference between being arrogant and self-deprecating. You don't have to be either. Just do your thing. Be in the middle. Be yourself, but speak with confidence and speak your truth. If you know something and you're good at something, don't start with, "Well, I'm not so sure if this." No. If you know what you're talking about, just say it. Say it with confidence.
I love the advice you just gave about being vocal about what it is that you want, because I think a lot of times people are expecting that. A lot of times people are expecting someone to have a position open or a promotion and to come and find them and say, "Hey, we thought of you." And that does happen, of course. Mm-hmm. But I think oftentimes what I've seen is people who have a willingness to put their hat in the ring and say, you know, "I'm looking for this." Even if they're not yet qualified, even if they're, I think there's a lot to be said for really going for it. And that is one of the hallmarks of the, and I'm not selling the book, but I did agree with a lot of the principles of Lean In, and really telling women to go for it and to, you know, be willing to put themselves out there. And, you know, it's almost sometimes, like you said earlier, with expecting the spouse to read your mind too. and you know, it's not necessarily productive, and we oftentimes think that our bosses and people should know what our talents are and know what our capabilities are. But I think the unfortunate reality and the piece that I've been hearing a common theme about is powerful assumptions that are made, you know, particularly about women, based on, you know, some of the other things that they might be balancing. And so it is so critical to not only have a vision for yourself of where you want to go, but be willing to share that with others and engage them in the process.
Another aspect that is very important, Allison, is when you have your one-on-ones with your supervisor. See, a good supervisor should know what the employee is doing and should know how good the employee is. However, that's, again, an assumption that one should never make. So when one goes to visit the supervisor on a one-on-one, always make sure you bring up the things that you're doing. Make sure this happened, this is going really well. Again, don't invent, don't inflate the information. No. But whatever you have done that is good, and don't be talking about we. If you did it, I did such and such. If it's a group, yes, we. I don't encourage saying I when it's a we. No. But if it's a don't be saying we either, because it dilutes the effect of what you have done. But make sure that your supervisor is always informed of what you're doing and what you have done, and you're, without boasting, without being obnoxious. And there's a balance there, but you can achieve it. It's not that complicated. Just make sure your supervisor knows what you're doing. Because come the end of the year, especially if the supervisor has 50 people, then your efforts may be diluted, see? And then you don't get the raise, and then you're upset because you didn't get rewarded. Well, if the supervisor doesn't know, then it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that advice really resonates with me. And I often wondered if that was a gender thing, or if it was because I spent 14 years, as you know, in nonprofit. And so in nonprofit, it is about the we. It's about engaging people and being part of the process and that sort of thing. And so so it's very hard to even differentiate your own personal accomplishments and speak in those terms. But I tend to suspect that that's not just isolated to nonprofit. I think that it's probably pretty common to a lot of women.
Very much so. And I hear it. But how don't they know that I did all of this? Well, how are they going to know? Again, a good supervisor, and if those of you that are listening, if you're a supervisor, that goes back to the piece about you should know your people and you should know what they're doing. That's your responsibility as a supervisor. However, that doesn't happen all the time. So don't take it for granted and don't make assumptions. Just proceed and inform the supervisor of what's going on. Yes.
Absolutely. What other questions do we have for those of you who are on the line? What are some of the, whether we frame them as a mistake or frame them as a learning opportunity, what have been your greatest learning opportunities in your career?
Actually, among the learning opportunities, and to be honest with you, Allison, I don't know that I would do it differently if I had to do it again.
Sure.
It did not do wonders for me to be involved early on in my career on women's issues and minority issues. That was not seen as a favorable thing by the company because, again, because of the times. The times were different. I don't know that I would do it differently because it gave me such joy to see the changes that happened and that benefited so many people. So if I had to do it again, I probably would do it again. In retrospect, that may not have been the wisest of things to do.
And I appreciate that what you've done. I appreciate that you said that, and I also, as unfortunate as I understand your perspective as well, because when you make changes like that, people notice and they see you as, oh boy.
Oh yeah, they think that, oh my God, this person is going to upturn the cart. And again, Lilly's a very conservative company, more than now. So change was not the kind of thing. They had a culture that, had been there for a long time. All of a sudden, these things need to change. And I don't know that, and I did it with a lot of finesse. I'm very civilized, but still, it's not the kind of thing that one does. And again, and that's part of it too. You have to go in there knowing what you're doing, and be clear that it may have a cost, and it's okay. But you have to know that, and you have to make that decision. Yes.
What advice would you have for that? Based on the changes and everything that you saw in your career and the trends that are going forward, what advice would you have for a woman as she's about ready to graduate from college? What are some of the things that you would tell her if given the opportunity?
I think that it would be nice if they can do like internships before they get to the real world, because school is definitely not what the real world. In research, it is, because you're going there and you're going to do research and you're continuing your life. And even then, though, what you're learning in academia is very basic research. When you get to the company, you have to apply it to something because they're not there to sell basic research. They're supposed, at least for example at Lilly, they're supposed to be selling medicines and preparing medicine. So I think that if you do some internships in your junior and senior year, I think that is huge. That is huge because it opens your eyes to what the real world is like and what to expect in a work environment, even from the way you should dress to everything, how you should conduct yourself. Yes, yes.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny because, and I think college and educational system does a great job to prepare for a lot of things. I mean, certainly the process of learning, and
Right.
there's a lot of things that that is really, is such a positive experience. Yet, the way it's set up, it really does set you up for this competitive nature as well. I've often thought about the fact that our educational system is based on ranking. That you're going for the A, and so that sort of continues in terms of a mentality, and
Right.
so. Whereas in order to be successful in the workplace, it is about understanding what your value is, what you're great at, and being able to work with a team. And I really don't feel like maybe college is setting people up for that sort of mentality. So I agree with you. I think getting some exposure to that to that in the form of an internship, I think, is really critical.
And learning how to think outside of the box. Because, see, when you get to a place and they say to you, it's always been done like this, you have to challenge that, because that's your responsibility. They're paying you for that. They may not like that you're challenging that, but that's what they're paying you for. If everybody's going to do, yeah, we've always done it like that, then how is the company going to get better? How is the business going to get better? So I think that's important also to challenge, and when you get to the place, and again, think outside of the box.
Absolutely, and the best supervisors encourage that sort of that opportunity to challenge and have dialogue, and sometimes it can be heated even, but that's healthy. That's healthy that people are engaged in the process and they're coming to the table with ideas and thoughts.
And the good supervisors also surround themselves by the best, even better than them, because it is good to have the best, so you have all sorts of ideas, you have diverse ideas. You don't want everybody to think like you. That makes no sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That embracing of kind of diverse thoughts and processes is so very critical. What are I'm excited because you've retired from Lilly. I know you're doing some really great things, and actually excited to be working with you on some of the things for Mentoring Women's Network as well. But what goals do you have for retirement? Have you given some thought to that?
We love to travel. My partner did it, and I love to travel, so we'll probably continue doing a lot of that. I have a ton of books that I have always wanted to read, that I have a whole list. I love history and politics, so I have a whole stack that I bought that I haven't read yet, so I'm delving into that. And probably take a little better care of myself in terms of my health, and make sure that I'm exercising like I should. I'm pretty good about that. But I like to eat, so I always have. And as you get older, the weight thing is an issue. So I have to balance that, be careful with that, try to take care of myself. Yeah.
Well, you referenced something that I think is something that we often overlook. It's taking care of our health, and with everything that we're often balancing, sometimes it's hard when you're working 12-hour days to fit in exercise and feel like you're being fully present with your family and that sort of thing. So that work-life balance thing we were talking about earlier.
Yes, very much so.
Absolutely. And I know you've taken some really great trips recently, and so we also have a shared passion, I think, for traveling and experiencing life. Have you thought about writing a book at all?
No, I have not. Because, see, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I have thought about it, related to women's issues and the like. But I'm very short and to the point, so I always think I would say the thing in 2 or 3 sentences, and what would the book be about? So I always laugh about that because, I'll say what needs to be said in a couple of sentences and I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a shared comment, because I tend to be very concise.
To the point. I don't need to go around it and around it. This is the situation. This is, yeah.
What attracted you to just getting involved with Mentoring Women's Network?
Actually, I had heard about the organization from Tonya Egan, and she introduced me to you, Allison, which I thought was a blessing. And I'm not a religious person, but I thought it was a blessing. And I have found it very enjoyable. And I attended a couple of your events, and I was very impressed by the seriousness of them, the quality of the people that were there attending, as well as the people that were facilitating. So I thought this would be an organization where it would be worth putting some of my time into. Yes.
Well, we couldn't be more thrilled to have you. I'm excited to work with you, and again, just motivated by your experiences and your willingness to be open and share so much of the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, and just the passion that you have for develop. You know, we repeatedly touched on what's your passion, and you're talking about developing other people, and I think that says so much about you. And you know, I know that you did leave a legacy, and that's something that you should be very, very, very proud of.
Thank you.
And you know, as I said, we're thrilled to have you. What other any other questions that we have for people on the call? Well, it looks like we do not have any more questions, and I just have so appreciated the opportunity really to get to know you, and I'm trying to think if there's any other questions that I have. I feel like we've covered so much.
I know. we're both fast speakers.
Yes,
So
you know, are there any other thoughts that you have to share? I guess I do have a final question. You know, as we've talked a lot about some of the challenges and the things that you've experienced over the years and your passion for advancing women, what going forward, you know, we've talked about a little bit of the statistics today and some of the things that I know that we're endeavoring upon, but what do you think it's going to take to get to a place where we're not talking about, you know, such a small percentage of women as senior leaders, and we're not talking about the wage gap and those other sorts of things? And I know it's a multifaceted approach, but look, from your standpoint, what is it going to take to get there?
I think it's going to take women to unite. I think there's a huge divide among women because they introduce topics that divide women. See, for example, take, for argument's sake, the issue of abortion. We're not talking about abortion. The issue is women's rights,
right,
and the women's right to choose, not abortion. That has nothing to do, but that has become the issue. So it's very divisive. It keeps women apart. No. It's about the right of women has to choose. And if we, again, start uniting the women and finding the things in common and the needs that we have that affect every woman, then I think that will be the time when we will do better. And again, the other piece is women that reach a certain position have the responsibility to bring others along. And it's not that they should or if there would be a nice to do. No. They have the responsibility to do so.
Agreed. And what other things do you think, in terms of culture and things within organizations, what are the factors that also need? I couldn't agree with you more about women helping
Yes.
women and leaning into our careers. What are some other things that you think would be critical in terms of the strategy for getting there?
I think organizations need to understand that they have to elevate to positions of responsibility women that think different from men. See, if you bring women that think like men, we're never going to get there because those women are not bringing other women along. See, you have to bring the women that are collaborative, that believe that other women should be brought forward, open the opportunities for others, more sponsoring. All of these things have to happen. And as long as organizations do not change that mindset, we're in big trouble.
And it comes from and I agree with you,
Yes.
from embracing the diversity of
Yes.
thought,
Yes.
and not being afraid of that.
Exactly.
You know, again, back to the conversation I had yesterday with somebody sharing his observations over the years. One of the things that he said that I thought was very unfortunate was, you know, in his observation, not only did women have to work harder to become promoted, they also felt like they had to act like a man when they did, and that. You know, it doesn't serve anybody, I guess. I certainly understand that, but also that authentic leadership that that women. And I've often heard and thought, and we've had discussions around the idea that women often don't see themselves as leaders. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, to pull together women and talk about leadership, sometimes they feel like they're not qualified to be talking to a CEO of a major company, and so it's really incredible that so many people don't really own their value, own their work, own their talents, and also their achievements.
But I'm not surprised by that, Allison, because society has not helped women to think in that way. Mm-hmm. See, society has put the onus on women. See, when you think about how women are objectified and vilified, think about it. Why would they think that they're strong and they're powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, there's so much work to be done. I'm excited to be working with you.
Very much so. The same here, Allison.
I actually was looking through that. I don't have any more questions, but I did have someone say, thank you. This was wonderful. What a fabulous woman. And I couldn't agree more.
Thank you very kindly for the comment.
Nice comment. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar today. Thank you again so much for the time that you spent today. Thank you to all of those of you on the call for your participation and thoughts and sharing. And this will be sent out on our national platform as a link to recording for the women who are not able to join us today, and certainly can share this with your peers and other people that you think may benefit from it. But in the meantime, please do encourage other women that you know to get involved with Mentoring Women's Network and join our national community, which is located at MWNnational.com. Thanks so much, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you very much, Allison.
Bye-bye.